Hi there guys, welcome to BoxPred. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a long time since I made a video for my channel, but here I am. I wanted to give my thoughts on an extremely good fight that's happening this weekend. It's a unification world title fight in the light welterweight division, or super lightweight division, I guess, whichever one you prefer. It sees Viktor Postol putting his WBC world title on the line against Terence Crawford, who is putting his WBO world title on the line. And these are the type of fights that I really like to see in boxing. Two top guys from a division going up against each other. And first of all, I want to look at Viktor Postol. Viktor Postol has come on the scene, kind of become more well known recently from his last fight, where he managed to stop Lucas Matthysse. And that, if you looked at it going in hindsight as a fight, you would say Viktor Postol is kind of the rangy fighter who would want distance. He would want to use skill and more technical attributes against a guy like Matthysse, who, although I do quite rate him as a decent boxer, is not known for his technique. He's more known for his power, for being able to hunt you down and use his power to eventually get to you, whether that be sooner or later. And many people will have thought that Matthysse would have, been able to get to Postol. Many people would have thought Postol would be able to perhaps outbox Matthysse, but what many wouldn't have been banking on was Postol being able to stop Matthysse. And yes, it did come down the stretch later in the fight. I think Matthysse got worn down, but this is really a bit of a trademark of Postol's, really, is that he has very good stamina, and he is able to keep the volume up throughout the fight. If you look only a couple of fights before that, he would manage to stop Selçuk Aydin late on. He's the Turkish fighter who beat Jojo Dan twice and has had a reasonably successful career, in fact. A pretty limited fighter, but decent nonetheless. So, Postol, for me, from what I've seen of him, looks like he has very good stamina. He's able to carry his speed and his power and his skills later into the fight, which makes him a tricky customer because he is currently unbeaten, and unless you get to him early on, you're in for a long night. And let's look at it from another aspect. Looking at that fight with Matthysse, Matthysse did catch Postol with a few good shots throughout the fight, but Postol showed to me that it looks like he has a decent chin. It looks like he can take a bit of a punch. Matthysse did land on him pretty well a few times, and we know Matthysse has some very good power, so that showed some decent durability on Postol's part, in my opinion. Postol used his range. He used his jab. That's something he might look to utilize in this fight. He usually does. Many people say that Crawford is a toe-to-toe type guy. I agree with that to a certain extent, but not fully, as I'll go into later. But Postol will probably be looking to use a jab. He'll be looking to keep range. And he's now with Freddie Roach. And it's probably no coincidence that he showed an offensive display such as he did under such a good offensive coach. But he did show defensive frailties. He does get hit, and that's no surprise being under a guy like Roach. But I can't really, I wouldn't like to attribute any defensive frailties to Roach at this stage. I think it's more likely that he's had a positive impact on the attack rather than a negative on the defense at this stage. But I think Postol will have confidence in his attack. He will have confidence from that Matthysse fight, from the Aydin fight, that he can actually carry a punch, and that he may have a chance to get at Crawford in this fight. Which, let's move on to Crawford. If you look at Crawford's last fight against Hammering Hank Lundy, he got caught early in the fight as well. Lundy had some success getting through to Crawford. I think Crawford possibly had a bit of a bad night, but even so, he managed to stop Lundy further on down the line. Now, just to talk about Crawford, he is one of my pound-for-pound top fighters. In fact, I would probably go as far to say that he is probably number 2 on my list behind Andre Ward at the moment. And this may be to some a bold statement, but I don't say it lightly. His victory over Yuriorkis Gamboa is quite possibly the best all-round performance I've seen from a boxer in recent times. Now, Crawford is also one of my favourite fighters, but something I have to look at to do when I'm looking at fights, and something I've always tried to maintain throughout my channel's life, is that I look at things objectively. I don't like favouring fighters to cloud my judgment. I always say I'm a fan of boxing before I'm a fan of boxers. So I just have a great respect for Terence Crawford. I think he's a fantastic fighter, and I just want to point out why. So he kind of came on the scene pretty much like Postol has recently. Crawford came on the scene with when he took the title off Ricky Burns. He came to Scotland and he beat Ricky Burns. I picked him to beat Burns, and he did. Back then, when I watched the guy fight, I knew I was seeing something quite special, something that I thought was going to grow into something possibly pound for pound. And it's turning out that way. It's been about 5 fights since then, and I think we're talking about, yes, the quality of opposition should probably continue to rise, but if you look at the guys he fought Yuriorkis Gamboa, who was unbeaten at the time, a guy who was, many people were raving about, and completely put on a fantastic display of boxing skill, of agility, speed, defense, offense. He's fought Raimundo Beltran, who many say got robbed against Ricky Burns, and who has a lot of respect in the boxing game. He's beaten Thomas Delorme, Thierry Jean. These are guys who are, I don't know if they were unbeaten when he fought him. They may have been, but they were those type of fighters who are unbeaten, and they've yet to really be tested. And then you come along and they face the top guy, and then you see what they're all about. And only time will tell whether those guys go on to do some more things, whether they were really top wins. But they were decent opposition. Let's just say that much. I think that much is safe to say. And then he beat Hank Lundy, he's been around the block now, and he is always pretty competitive, and he's always pretty game. And Crawford was able to handle him. The thing with Crawford is this. When I look at Postol and I tell you he's got stamina, he starts off a fight and he's using range and he's biding his time, and then later in the fight he'll just turn it on, and then his opponents quite often, thus far, the limited standard of opposition he's faced, haven't been able to live with that. Crawford is exactly the same in many respects, in that there will come a point in the fight where it'll just switch. And you saw that in the Lundy fight. You think Lundy's on top, you think he's having success, you think it's competitive, and then all of a sudden Crawford just he pulls an extra gear and he wipes the floor with the guy. And he's got power, and it tells. He has this ability to go through the gears and finally reach the point where his opposition just can't take any more. They can't live with him. The difference between him and Postol, from what I've seen and what I believe, is that he's on another level. That's why I've got him as high on my list of pound for pound as I have. I see Terence Crawford as a throwback fighter, in that he's not only extremely gifted and skillful and technical, but he's also willing to mix it up. He's not afraid to stand in front of you and have a war with you. And one of the reasons why I rate the performance against Gamboa so highly is because he went to war with Gamboa, but it wasn't really a war. Okay? It looked like a war, but really what you were seeing was almost boxing perfection. Gamboa was missing a hell of a lot in the pocket, and Crawford was making him pay instantly. And in the end, it just took its toll. A guy who's as quick and who's as good offensively as Gamboa was just exposed by pure world-class boxing. When you get some guys like Postol, in my opinion, for the most part. Perhaps not later in the fight when this guy's tired, but from the start, Postol needs to run. He needs to be a guy who clinches. He needs to be a guy who escapes you until he figures out something. Crawford's the type of guy who can stand in the pocket with you for the full fight, and he will wipe the floor with you. And you don't know what you're doing wrong. You're in the pocket. He's standing in front of you, but you just can't get him. Postol needs to hope that Crawford is there to get hit like he was against Lundy, because that's the only chance really Postol has, in my opinion. I'm picking Crawford by stoppage in this fight, and I think it's going to come in the latter stages of the fight. And I just think he's going to be too much for Postol running down the stretch. It may even come earlier, but he's going to have to be careful because Postol is nothing to mess with. This is a unification fight. This guy's he's got the goods. Like he has the ability to stop you. We've seen that. He's got skills. He can outbox you as well. He's got range. But I think coming up against Crawford, he's going to come up against something he's not seen before. Certainly not seen before. He's never fought a guy close to Crawford's standard. Matisse is pretty crude. He's a decent level boxer, but he's nowhere near as sharp and as quick and as complex in his angle throwing as Crawford is. And I really think that Crawford is the higher standard and higher caliber of fighter in this fight. I think Postol has come on the scene and he's doing pretty well. And what you need to watch out for is the fact that Roach is obviously teaching him something in offense, which is quite dangerous. It's something that Crawford needs to watch out for. He needs to watch that defense. Maybe start off a bit slower. Maybe not mix it up so quickly. But I think ultimately, you got this throwback guy, Crawford. Crawford's a guy I can see he could have fought I can see he could have seen him fighting in the 70s, 80s. This guy is like they plucked him from another era, and he's the type of guy they don't make them like that anymore. I really believe that, and I just think he's gonna turn up the gear in this fight, and he's gonna show us what he's all about again. I really rate the guy. If you haven't seen much of Crawford, I really would ask you to watch him. Look back at his fights. It's really a delight to behold the quality of boxing. I know there's guys out there who won't rate him as highly as I do. You may be wondering what the hell I'm talking about. But just from my opinion, my perspective, what I like to see in boxing. Not only is he technically gifted, not only has he got brilliant physical attributes and just boxing skill, but he's also a good to watch. He's good for fans to watch. He's good. You can turn on and enjoy his fight. It's not like you might watch a Guillermo Rigondeaux or you might watch Floyd Mayweather and you have to, or Bernard Hopkins, and you really have to be a purist and to appreciate the technical aspects of the game because it's a bit boring. Andre Ward, people call him boring all the time. For me, that I like those type of fighters, but for Crawford, he's a different animal for me. He's not only that, he's also good to watch. He mixes it up. He gives the fans something to watch. He gives it an opportunity for the fight to develop into something more than just him outboxing a guy. So I'm going to leave it there. I've been going on for quite a while. That's what I think about this fight. I think that it's a very good fight. It's pretty competitive, but I think that competitiveness will dissolve as the fight goes on. And I'm picking Terence Crawford to stop Viktor Postol later in the fight. Hopefully going to make some more videos. I'm going to try and get back into doing these. There's plenty to talk about with boxing the way it is at the moment. Quite a lot going on. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys, and let me know what you think about this fight. What do you think about Crawford? What do you think about Postol? Am I missing something with this guy? Have you watched a bit more than I have, perhaps, and you really think that he has more of a chance than I think in this fight? Yeah, thanks for tuning in. This is BoxPred. I'm out.